left to right doesn't work out on email. So the letters would be all jumbled up. So anyway. Okay, thanks. Yes.
What if you scanned it and then attached it to an email?
Sound just like my wife. I have to learn how to do that. This is what we're going to be looking at.
It's quite easy.
That you. Who is this? Is it? Oh, I thought it was Gail, my wife. Same words, and I'm like, all right, that's a good idea. I'll see if I can figure that out next week. I think we have one. I just feed it in, and anyway, another layer. Yes.
One more thing. Can you mute all of us on the Zoom so that there won't be any noise that distracts from what you're saying?
Yes. I did it. There you go. All right. The letters that are written out here, all right, Kaf, Mem, Nun, Pe, and Hade. Those letters are the only ones that when they are at the end of a word, change the way they look. Okay? And so what you have listed here is you have the normal kaf, which looks like that. Okay? But when it's at the end of a word, it looks like that. Okay? Now, it's easy, because I've done it. Believe me, I think I did it today when I was reading. It's easy to look at that and get a dalet out of that. Like, that's a dalet, but that's not a dalet. That's a final off at the end of a word. Okay?
Hangs below the line.
It hangs below the line. So if you remember that it goes below the line, then you'll be doing good. Okay, the next one is the mem, which looks something like that. When it's at the end of a word, it looks like that. Okay, it looks almost like a square. It's the only letter that looks like that. Okay, so when you're reading a word and you get the mem, and you know what a mem looks like, then you get to the end of the word and you're like, what in the world is that? It's a mem. Okay, so these are all those that change when they're at the end of the word. Okay, this is a noon. Looks almost like a little bracket. Okay, when it's at the end of the word, it's just a little thing that goes that way and then down. Okay, so it just has a little bitty nub there, and then it goes down and it goes under the line.
But why do they do that? Why can't they just use the normal symbol?
I do not know. Many of these whys, I don't even ask. I don't know. I learned them, and then I learned the language. And then maybe later on I'll learn the why. But I don't know. That's a good question. I wanted to know that. I think I asked my Hebrew professor that, and I think he just laughed at me. Like, I don't know. Yeah, we're learning the language. We're not learning why. Okay, this is the hey. Remember, when it's at the end, it's zoom. Comes down like that, all right, under the line. And the tzahade does something a lot like that. It looks like this, and then it goes down under the line. Okay? So, don't get that confused with the ayin, but the ayin doesn't have an end that is different. It doesn't have one of those final forms. Okay? All right. Now, my goal is next week we'll begin throwing in some vowels and learning the vowels, and then you'll know the letters and the vowels, and you can start reading words. You can really read words without the vowels. Okay? So the next thing that I have written there are words. Okay? We used they're in the middle there. We looked at these words last week. We went over this list of words. So what I have given you is I've given you the meaning in English, and then there's a line there, and the line is so that you can write in the pronunciation of those words. Okay? Word number 1 is an ayin and a mem, right? Now, you'll notice each of these words is an example of one of these final letters that we went over, that we just went over. So the ayin mem has that final version of mem, okay? It means people. How would you pronounce that word even though you don't have the vowel? Come, say it. I'm, almost. Okay, So if you used I'm, a rabbi would think that you're maybe from New York or something like that, but you got it right. So is the word, and it means people. Okay, People of Egypt, Mitzrayim. People of Israel, Yisrael. But normally in the Bible, God doesn't refer to Israel as Israel. Normally it's B'nai Yisrael, children of Israel, because they're his family, right? Okay? How interesting. The next one is an ayin and a what? Noon. Ayin and a noon. Okay? So how would you pronounce that? Ayin. It literally is ayin, as in the letter ayin. Okay, that's the way that you spell the letter ayin, but the letter ayin means eye. And in the ancient language, it looked like an eye, like an eyeball, shaped like an eye with a little thing in the middle of it. Okay? So now you know ayin means eye. Okay, the next one, what are those letters? We have Beit and Resh, and what's the last letter? Kaf. Beit and Resh and Kaf. And the meaning of that word is bless. There are some other meanings like kneel. Okay, Aneel, kneel. How would you pronounce that? Say it again. Baruch, almost. It is a form of that word, Baruch. Barak. Okay, Barak. There's a congregation that meets Sundays here in the afternoon, and the name of their fellowship is Barakah, which means blessing, because they want to be a blessing. Barakah. Barak. Okay, the last word there is, not the last, the second to last. Okay, so what do we have? We have a kaf and a noon and a what? Pay. It's a pay. Final pay. Ow, sorry, my leg. Okay, and the word means wing. So how would you pronounce kaf, noon, final pay? That's not an easy one to guess, but say almost. Okay, that pay, enough. Okay, it's not going to have a dot in it when we start putting dots in letters. It's enough.
Wait. Say it again.
Enough.
So okay. So the pay is at the end of a word. It's pronounced like PH.
No, it's not when it's at the end. It's when it does not have a dot in it. Okay? However, Yeah, but however, none of them yet we haven't done dots. So your guess was as good as a guess as you can get with what you have there. Okay, the last one is only 2 letters. It's an ayin and a what? Sade. All right, and it means tree. Okay, how would you pronounce that? Etz. Okay, that means tree. Etz. Okay, maybe you've heard of a book called the Etz Chaim, or you've heard of Etz Chaim. That's tree of life. Yes.
Is the spelling E-T-Z?
It would be E-T-S.
E-T-S?
Etz. Now, I have at the bottom just a review of what we did over the last couple of weeks, and I have the Hebrew letters and the English meanings, and we're going to just read them and pronounce them out loud. Okay, so word number 1, what would that be? Av, father, Av, as in Abraham. Okay, the next word means house, Beit, like Beit El. What is Beit El? What would that mean? House of the Mighty One, or house of God. Okay, the next word is hold them up there like that so you guys can see them. The next word, how would you pronounce that? Tabar. Okay, tabar. It means word or matter. That word is used a lot in the Bible. The word tabar, which means word. The word word is used a lot in the word. Okay, the next one, that's I'm reading it upside down. So that's an ayin and a mem. We already learned that one above. That's which is people. Okay, the next word, Moshe, which means Moses, right? Okay, and the next word, yada, meaning know or experience. And the last word is an easy one, even though it's long. You're going to begin to recognize that just by looking at it, and you won't even need to sound it out. Elohim. Okay, which means mighty ones. Elohim. Now, we went over, when we looked at Genesis 1, we went over the idea that the word used in Genesis 1 is Elohim, which means mighty ones. But we always translate it as God, not gods. Because it wouldn't be right to say in the beginning, gods created the heavens and the earth. And that means that forever, there have been theologians that have been trying to figure out why it is that the one God, who very specifically says, I am one, okay, uses the plural for a title of who he is, right? And one of the ideas is, well, it's Father, Son, Holy Ghost. All right, there's 3 in 1. That's one of the ideas. Another of the ideas is that it means the majestic plurality. Okay, meaning he's above all the other gods. He is a God among gods, right? There are other gods, but there are no other gods like Elohim. So he's the God above all the other gods. It says that more than once in the Tanakh. Okay? When he says there are no other gods like me, he doesn't mean there are no other gods. Because there are. Because that just means a mighty one that people worship. Right? Okay, so let's look at Bo. Exodus. We're at the end, or almost at the end of the plagues, and I wonder if in the reading of your notes, if you want to begin tonight with any questions that you had or anything that you noticed that jumped out at you in the reading. If not, then we'll go ahead and work through things in here that are highlights, okay? They're not all new. Some of the things are new, maybe new to you, but we'll look at the highlights. I'm not going to read everything in here because I don't think we'll make it to get through all of them tonight. But I think it's amazing that the word used when Adonai, Yehovah, said to Moses, go to Pharaoh, it doesn't normally mean go. It normally means come. All right? In our English Bibles, we translate the word as if God is giving a command to Moses. Now, Moses, go. Okay? In reality, it's more likely that what God is doing is saying, Moses, let's go. Come with me. We will go in and meet with Pharaoh. Because in the very beginning of when he was speaking to Moses, and Moses, he said, who am I that I should go into Pharaoh? God, he said, I'll be with you. So this is an example of God being with Moses, saying, all right, Moses, we're going to go back in. Come with me. Let's go in and meet him again. Okay? Now, why does he want to go into his house? Why is he going right into the middle of Egypt where Pharaoh is? And the idea is that the power over Egypt is manifest in that ruler, Pharaoh, who believed that he was a god. So in the eyes of the Egyptians, he's divine. He's a god. So now, our God, Yehovah, is going to go in with Moses and lay down the law, if you will, to the guy who thinks that he is the Almighty. And he is learning that he's not the Almighty. Okay? Okay, so we read in that verse, in verse 1, that God says, Moses, let's go into Pharaoh. And then you read, for I have made him and his servants hard-hearted, so that I can demonstrate these signs of mine among them. I know we've been over this more than once, but let's hit it again, all right? Yes, sorry.
Does that apply to us today when you're having a hard time trying to get something? God wants to manifest himself in your trial you're going through?
Well, I think, yes, I believe that you're right, that God does want to be present in whatever it is that you're in the middle of. Yes. However, and this is my belief, okay? My belief is that God doesn't do, everything that happens to you isn't God doing something to you. Sometimes what happens to us is our own foolishness. Right? Our own bad choices. That's what happens. Sometimes we're in the middle of the result of somebody else's bad choices. Okay, like Egypt was. Like the people of Egypt, they were in the middle of a bad ruler, Pharaoh, who was behaving in a wicked and evil way, and some of them got wiped out in the middle of it. All right? Just like people in Germany in the Second World War, not every German was behind Hitler, but most of them did what he wanted. Okay? And a lot of them, when asked years later, why did you do this? Their answer was, we were just following orders. right? Okay? So that happened back in Exodus, and that happens right now, today. Okay? Now, we looked at the word that was used earlier in Exodus with the beginning of the plagues. When you read that, Pharaoh's heart was hardened, and sometimes you read that he did it, and sometimes you read that God did it. Okay? And what does that mean? Theologically, what does that look like? And what does that mean that God hardens people's hearts? And there's a couple of different views on that, and they're radically in opposition to one another. People usually come down on one end or the other. All right? In general, Christianity, evangelical Christianity, comes down on the Calvinist end of it, which is basically whatever happens, God does it. Okay? God hardening the heart means God went in and took over the mind and the heart of Pharaoh and made him mean, in order that he could, reveal his glory or whatever. Okay? So that's one view. The other view is that God is strengthening the resolve of Pharaoh that Pharaoh already had. But he does it a very interesting way. And if you go ahead, this is a little bit later in your notes, if you go ahead to the book of Romans and you read Romans 1, it gives you an outline of the way God hardens the hearts. Okay? And so on your second page in notes, there's Romans 1. This is from Romans 1. Okay? It's not easy anywhere to just jump right into one of the letters unless you read the whole letter, but we're going to do it anyway. At least we're not just reading one verse. Okay? What is revealed is God's anger from heaven against all the godlessness and wickedness of people, who in their wickedness keep doing what? Suppressing or holding down or hiding the truth. Because what is known about God is plain to them, since God has made it plain to them. For ever since the creation of the universe, his invisible qualities, both his eternal power and his divine nature, have been clearly seen, because they can be understood from what he has made. Stop right there. Like what? What has he made that if you have a brain, you can look at it and go, oh, there's a God. You! Your hand, your eye, your body, your child. People say the mountains. Yes, the mountains and the stars and the earth and all that. Yes, but just look in the mirror. Okay? And how amazingly we are put together as living, thinking, breathing, feeling beings. It's amazing. So Paul is like, look, he says, everybody knows, basically. Okay? I read today, and I think it was a book by Jordan Peterson, if you guys have ever heard of him. He's well worth reading if you can get through the mumbo-jumbo, psychological mumbo-jumbo. But I was reading, and he said he was debating with the guy, and the guy said, I'm an atheist. And he said, no, you're not. His view is there are no atheists. Everybody knows. Okay? You have chosen to live a certain way, and it's basically rebellion. But anyway, this is what Paul is writing, not me. Okay, so he goes on. He says, therefore, they have no excuse, because although they know who God is, they do not glorify him as God or thank him. On the contrary, they have become futile in their thinking. I think in the King James it says darkened in their thinking, and their undiscerning hearts have become darkened. There's the word. Claiming to be wise, they have become fools. In fact, they have exchanged the glory of the immortal God for mere images, like a mortal human being, or like birds or animals or reptiles. This is why God has given them up to the vileness of their hearts' lusts, to the shameful misuse of each other's bodies. They have exchanged the truth of God for falsehood by worshiping and serving created things rather than the Creator. Praise be He forever. Amen. Okay? The way that God hardens, the way that He hardened Pharaoh was with His words. He kept speaking to him. He kept offering him a way out. And the more he did it, the more Pharaoh's heart hardened, and he resisted and he rebelled. So God increased the revelation, if you want to think of it that way. He increased the revelation, and Pharaoh increased his rebellion, stubbornness. So that's my idea. Okay? Let's move on and go back on 1 and notice that the word that was used up to now when Pharaoh's heart was hardened was the word strengthen. Okay? Chazak in Hebrew. Now it's a different word. But in your English Bible, there's only one word that is used for both of these Hebrew words, but they don't mean the same thing. Now the word being used is a word that's, the root word of it is kabed, kabod, which means heavy and weighty, and it's the very word where we get the idea of glory, the glory of God, the weightiness of God. So Pharaoh's heart was made weighty. It was made heavy. Okay, it was like, you're not going to move it. All right?
That's not the word kadosh, is it?
Nope, kadosh. No, that's holy. Yep. Now, in last week's, and this is another way that you can see that his heart is growing weighty, heavy. Okay, is last week we read at the end of the reading, we read Pharaoh admitting out loud to Moses, "This time I have sinned. Adonai is in the right, and I and my people are in the wrong. Please intercede with Adonai. We can't take any more of this thunder and hail. I will let you go. You will stay no longer." Okay? So right then and there, it looks like, if it's true what you're reading in his words, that Pharaoh recognized the truth. I'm wrong. You're right, and your God is right, and I will let you go. And then he doesn't. He hardens his heart, changes his mind, and he doesn't let him go. So what's different about Pharaoh's initial changing his mind, and now is that he knew. Okay? What was it before? I don't know Yehovah. I never heard of him. And I'm not going to let your people go. I don't know who he is. Now he's saying, all right, I will admit there is a God, and his name is Yehovah, and he was right and I was wrong. Okay? Nope. It's not going to let him go. Okay? So there's a movement in the direction of the gravity of what he is doing or not doing and not allowing them to go.
Kabod is also used to describe putting 2 oxen into a yoke.
Really? Kabod. Putting oxen into a yoke.
And giving them a slot in the butt, making them pull the burden.
Oh.
It's a complex word, but it does mean burden, but it means you have to have been put into a yoke to pull a burden.
Oh, isn't that interesting? Very interesting. Thank you for that. Okay, go ahead.
So this hardening of the heart is, the word says that that God resists the proud,
Yep.
right? So
Yes.
it's an abomination, right?
Of course. Yes.
So God is actually conveying this to Moshe, right?
Yes. Conveying it to Moses.
Yeah.
Right.
This guy's, yeah.
And here's something else, and to think about this. God, whether or not God is the one that did it or God is the one that is blamed for doing it or whatever, God is the one that is going to use it. Okay? So he's going to use Pharaoh's own rebellion in order to demonstrate not only to get Israel out of Egypt. That's nothing for God. Well, none of this is anything for God. But getting Israel out of Egypt is not the only goal. Because over and over and over again, we've read that the Egyptians might know that I am Yehovah, right? That there's none like me. God always has that in mind. You know, even at the very bitter end of whatever, he's always, I believe he always wants and desires people to acknowledge him and come to him and come to know the truth. He's really that good, amazingly good, as we're going to find out Friday night. In Friday night's message, it's about the goodness of God and how God is much, 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 much better than you are. Okay? And that means he's a lot more merciful than you are, or I am. So that's something to think about. That's something that lifts me up in a way. Well, it helps me know I have a need to be more merciful, but it amazes me at his mercy. But we'll find out more about that Friday night. Okay, now, all of this is related in the Word to what happens in Isaiah with Israel. Because doesn't Israel get proud? Don't they have pride? Don't they have arrogance? Doesn't Israel begin to make other gods and worship other gods and forget all about Yehovah who brought them out of Egypt? Which, by the way, is another great rabbi trail, is the extreme importance of remembering. How much value and how much speech is given in the Bible to the idea of remember. Remember, 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 remember. What do you think all of these Moedim are? All of these feasts and holy days. They're God giving you ways to remember. Remember. Okay? But Israel did not remember, and they forgot. All right? And in Isaiah, by the way, this is on the bottom of 2 in my notes. In Isaiah, he writes, "Make the heart of this people sluggish with fat. Stop up their ears and shut their eyes." Sounds just like what he's doing to Pharaoh, doesn't it? "Otherwise, seeing with their eyes and hearing with their ears, then understanding with their hearts, they might repent and be healed." Sounds like God doesn't want them to do that. Okay? Which is not true. He does. How in Isaiah does God make the heart of the people fat and sluggish? Another way to ask it is, how is he hardening Israel? Because he's speaking to them through Isaiah. And the more he speaks, the harder they get. They won't listen. Okay? It was like that in Yeshua's day, and Yeshua used that very verse from Isaiah when he was speaking about some of the people in his day. He said, "You're just like the people that Isaiah wrote about, that said, make their hearts fat, okay, their ears stopped up, because then they won't. Otherwise, they'll be able to hear. But you're going to keep on hearing, but never understanding. Keep on seeing, but never really seeing." Okay? Okay, second verse of the Exodus, from Exodus that we're reading from. Okay, so Moses, we're going to go in, we're going to speak to Pharaoh again, and he's not going to let you go. His heart is going to be hardened in order that I may display my glory. Then he says, so that you can tell your son and your grandson about what I did to Egypt and about my signs that I demonstrated among them, so that you will all know that I am Adonai. Okay, so there we go. Remember, 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 generation after generation. I have a couple of quotes there, one from Dennis Prager, the other from Robert Alter. And the idea is that the Exodus is the foundation of Israel. It's their number one thing, okay, that they are remembering and to remember. Now, what's amazing about this is all this is ends up being a picture of what Jesus does, what Yeshua does, right? Was he there during the Exodus? Was Yeshua there during the Exodus? Of course. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God. Okay? Yeah, he was there. What's amazing is in next week's reading, when Moses does the song of Moses, when they cross through the waters and they sing it, right? They're going to be singing the words, the Lord my God, my strength, my song, he has become my victory. And they're going to say, Yehovah, my Elohim, has become my Yeshua, salvation. Okay? So his name rings throughout the scriptures. Isn't that amazing? Okay. In the NAS, I put the NAS version in there because it has the words, I made a mockery, in the second verse, and the Complete Jewish Bible does not really pick that up at all. That Hebrewism that means made a mockery or played with. All right, so when you hear that, he says basically so that you can let your children and your grandchildren know how I played with the Egyptians. Okay? Bink, 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 bink.
Eugene Peterson says toyed with them.
Toyed with them like a cat with a mouse. That is the picture there. Very interesting, okay? I like the fact that God wants to be the ultimate Superman, okay, for children, right? Now, Isaiah wrote about the demise of the king of Babylon, who is used as an example of Satan. Okay? So in Isaiah, the 14th chapter, you read this. You are brought down to Sheol, to the uttermost depths of the pit. Those who see you will stare at you, reflecting on what has become of you. Is this the man who shook the earth, who made kingdoms tremble? And it goes on and on. Hey, how's it going? If you want notes, you can pop right up and get them. We're on page 3. You are right on Anchorage, who knows when time. It's all right. Glad you're here. Oh, all right, now, in Isaiah, not only in Isaiah, but in Ezekiel as well, there are these passages that are about literal men. Okay? But they are used as a description of the devil, basically. Okay? These are some of the words. So basically the idea is that one day, when we all get, to look on the demise of Satan and his demons, we're going to be going, is that the one who shook the earth and made it tremble? Kind of like, really? That's what we were all worried about? He's the guy that did all that? Kind of like that. So Moses and Aaron went into Pharaoh. It said to him, here's what Adonai, God of the Hebrews, is. How much longer will you refuse to do what? Submit to me. Let my people go so that they can worship me. So Gar, what is it you brought up a few minutes ago about what Pharaoh was? Proud. That is the one thing that over and over, and it's like a magnet aimed in the wrong direction. You take magnets, if one of the magnets is God and the other magnet is you, and you have pride, okay, and I don't mean the good pride, like I'm proud of my dog, or my daughter, sorry. I mean the evil pride, exalting you. It's like the magnets that you cannot get near him. He will not allow it, okay? And Gar brought that verse up about pride and eyes that are haughty, all right? And that's exactly what Pharaoh is doing. Now, you might not recognize it in the English, but in the Hebrew, right there, Moses and Aaron begin to speak with great confidence. There's no longer any, will you let them go? We want you to let them go. Now it's, look, buddy, let them go. Okay? Because this is what's going to happen. So now Moses has gained confidence. Could we say it like that? He's gained confidence. He's gained strength. Because that's what happens. Just like it happens with you and me. Okay? We can either gain it or we can lose it. Right? But Moses is, at the beginning, remember, Moses was like, not me. Nope. You got the wrong guy. Okay? Now Moses is like, you will let us go. Okay?
His faith.
Yes, his faith grew and was growing. Okay? Now, do you think that Pharaoh would have given in when Moses began to speak like that? Considering that Pharaoh's entourage was all around him, and Moses comes in and goes, look, buddy, how long are you going to do this, and when are you going to submit to God? Pharaoh's looking around the room, and his buddies are all there around in the room. His buddies, his slaves are all around him in the room. I doubt that he's going to go, you're right. Okay? He did it once, but immediately after he did it, he submitted. He said, all right, you're right, I'm wrong, you can leave. And then, boom, changes his mind. Okay?
Well, can't we, how it applies to us, that we can walk in authority that Christ has given us, right?
Yes.
If you're walking in righteousness.
That's right. Yes. And that doesn't mean that you are prideful. It means that you're confident. There's nothing wrong with that. Confidence is not a bad word. Okay? You believe. You trust. Yes. Good. He says, you're going to let them go so they can worship me. Okay? Which reminds us that freedom in God's eyes is not the license to do whatever you want. Okay? That's not the way it works. Even the founders of our nation knew that. They did not mean by liberty the liberty to do whatever the heck you want. No, we're a nation of laws. At least we were meant to be a nation of laws. Why? Why would we need laws? Why not just have absolute liberty with no laws? It would be chaos. Why? Why would it be chaos? I think you're right. What? Because everybody would be doing what they want, not what God wants. All right? Because man, apart from God, is not inherently good. Okay? And there's a movement today that it's a big movement, and they're one of the beliefs that they think that they believe, or they want others to believe, is that all people are basically good. Okay? And the only way that you can believe that is not to read history, not to know anything about history. Okay? Well, that's one of the reasons why history is being removed and rewritten. Okay? So anyway, so that they can worship me. That reminds us that freedom is for the purpose of worshiping God and obeying Him and serving Him. And in that there's freedom because you get to be who you were designed to be. Okay, so the next plague that is going to hit is the locusts. And one of the gods of Egypt was the god that looked like a jackal that supposedly guarded the fields, whose name was Anubis. And what happened to the fields? All their crops got eaten by the locusts. Okay? Finally, Pharaoh's servants said to him, "How much longer must this fellow be a snare for us? Let the people go and worship Adonai their God. Don't you understand yet that Egypt is being destroyed?" So now Pharaoh's control over his own servants and army is beginning to slip away, and even they seem to be turning against him. Okay? By the way, we already read a verse that said that God hardened the hearts of Pharaoh's servants. And right here, we're reading about the servants of Pharaoh saying to Pharaoh, you got to let him go. So, what does that mean? Okay? That means they chose, or were beginning to choose the right way to let them go. So the fact that their hearts were hardened does not mean that God overrode their free will and made them be a certain way. Okay? It just means they were stubborn, and now they're beginning to lighten up in their stubbornness. Okay? So Moses and Aaron were brought to Pharaoh again, and he said to them, "Go, worship Adonai your God." But who exactly is going? This is like, I don't know, this is to me is like a scene out of a New York deli. Okay, with just a couple of mafia guys, right? They're dealing and dickering of who's going to do this and who's going to do what, right? Okay. And Moses basically looks at him and says, "Everyone, we're all going." Okay? All of us, sons and daughters, flocks and herds, basically every living thing in Goshen that is B'nai Yisrael is going to go with us. Okay? And we're going to go because we must celebrate a feast to Adonai. Okay? The words, I got this out of Prager. I thought it was really good. The words, "we will all go, young and old." Anybody want to pronounce that? B'nei Areinu uviskenenu nikla has entered the Hebrew language as an expression of a Jew's commitment to not abandon other Jews in times of need or persecution. No one, not the old, not the children, not the women, the three most vulnerable groups will be left behind. Now, as proof that part of our foundation in America is the Bible, aren't there rules in the armed forces for when you're in war? No man left behind. Okay, isn't that what Saving Private Ryan was all about? That we will leave no one behind. I know the Marines, I've heard that is a big deal. You know, we're not leaving anybody behind. Okay, well, right here in Exodus, we're not leaving anybody behind. Okay, so Moses reached out with his staff over the land of Egypt, and Adonai caused an east wind to blow on the land all day and all night, and in the morning the east wind brought the locusts. Okay? The east wind may have very well been that Shrav wind, which is a strong, dusty, warm desert storm wind that happens. Okay? Now, we deal with the locusts and all that, and then now Pharaoh again says no, and we move into the next one, which is Adonai said to Moses, reach out your hand toward the sky, and there will be darkness over the whole land of Egypt, darkness so thick it can be felt. Very interesting that the god that was like the highest in the Egyptian pantheon was Ra, the sun god. Okay, so this was a direct affront against their highest god, Ra or Amun-Ra. Okay, and imagine 3 days that God was nowhere to be found. Why is Ra gone to bed? What is going on? After the darkness was over, Pharaoh again said, all right, get out, go. But he said, go with your children, but leave the cattle behind. There we go again, okay? Moses said that's not going to happen. We're taking everyone and everything. So Pharaoh,
And we're not coming back.
well, that's where we're going. That's right. And we're not, this is it, buddy. All right? So then Pharaoh said to them, get away from me, and you had better not see my face again, because the day you see my face, you will die. And Moses answered, well spoken, I will see your face no more. Okay? Then if you're wondering in the 11th chapter how it is that he's having more words with Pharaoh, he hasn't left the room yet. Okay? So they're having this, okay? So he's still there. He's about to leave, and this is like the end of the dialogue here, where in verse 1 of 11, Adonai said to Moshe, I'm going to bring still one more plague on Pharaoh in Egypt, and after that he will let you leave here. When he does let you go, he will throw you out. Okay? And I think that's the Hebrew word. I can't remember the word, but it means throw, like I'm going to pitch you out of here, all right? And all the firstborn in the land of Egypt will die, from the firstborn of Pharaoh sitting on his throne to the firstborn of the slave girl at the handmill, and all the firstborn of the livestock. And there will be a horrendous wailing throughout all the land of Egypt. There has never ever been one like it, and there never will be again. By the way, that's a Hebrew idiom. Okay? And you hear it over and over again in the Bible. There's never been one like it, and there'll never be one like it again. And you know what that means? It's really bad. That's what it means. Okay? It's like mega, mega, mega bad what's going to happen. Very interesting that the judgment ends up being a measure for measure. Okay? Because that's all Torah allows. It doesn't allow anything beyond measure for measure. It can allow something below measure for measure, which is why some of the laws are the limit. Okay? The laws that have the death penalty are given as a limit. That doesn't mean that the guy has to die, but it means that it's legal for him to be put to death. Okay? So, this is an idea of measure for measure. Remember where we learned that Israel was Jehovah's what? Firstborn. Okay? Right at the very beginning of Exodus, we learned that Israel is Jehovah's firstborn. So now the judgment is going to be against Egypt's firstborn. But it isn't only against Egypt's firstborn, is it? Well, who was included in this judgment of the death of the firstborn? Who, I should say, who and what? The animals. What about Israel?
If they didn't have the blood.
If they didn't have the blood. Okay? So you had this thing going on where there was this line made, this line of separation, all right, where God says, I'm not going to do in the land of Goshen what's going on in the land of Egypt. Okay? While Egypt is going to be in darkness, Israel is not going to be in darkness. B'nai Yisrael. Up in the land of Goshen, there's going to be light there. Okay? But when it comes down to the final plague, now Israel's got to do something, right? They got to put the blood on the door of their houses. Okay? Same thing with us. We have to put the blood on the door of our hearts and our lives and our houses. Right? The blood of Jesus, the blood of Yeshua. Okay? So, wailing, a cry and an outcry of distress. All right? Alter in his Bible, his version of the Hebrew Bible, says that this word has a range that means either cry or scream. Okay, so, don't just think of wailing and moaning and this tremendous sound of screaming throughout the land of Egypt. But not even a dog's growl will be heard against any of the people of Israel, neither against people nor against animals. In this way, you will realize that Adonai distinguishes between the Egyptians and Israel. Okay, which is, something we learned back in the very beginning in Genesis, that God makes distinctions. God makes separation. Part of bringing order out of chaos is having lines and divisions. Okay? So everybody's not alike. Right? You guys are all unique, just like everybody else. Remember that. Thank you, Kathy, for laughing at my really bad dad humor. I think it's good. Say that to people that you know. You know what? You are so unique, just like everybody else. You're so special in the eyes of God. Just like the other guy over there. All right? Okay, so now Adonai spoke to Moses and Aaron in the land of Egypt. He said this, you are to begin your calendar with this month. Okay, now we get mass confusion erupting in those that are reading, especially those of us who are Christians, who are learning about Hebrew roots and all that. It just is like, which is the right calendar? Now, Dennis Prager wrote this in his commentary on Exodus. The Torah is referring to the Hebrew month of Nisan. Okay, stop right there. In Exodus, they did not have the name Nisan for the month. Okay, that's a Babylonian word. So that's a borrowed word for a name of a month. it's irrelevant. That doesn't matter, okay? You get where Prager is going with this, okay? He's talking about the beginning of the Hebrew months. The Jewish calendar has 2 different first months. One is Tishrei, the autumn month that includes Rosh Hashanah, or the New Year, and Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement. It is celebrated as a time of repentance and new beginnings and the creation of the world. The other is the month of Nisan. It is celebrated as a time of rebirth, renewal, and the beginning of the Jewish nation. Virtually every nation celebrates both the beginning of the new year and the beginning of its own country. So we have 2 New Years in the U.S., January 1 and 4th of July. So he's equating this idea of why they have a new year in the fall and a new year in the spring with the idea that we as Americans have January 1 and 4th of July, and both of them are like New Year's.
But this is man.
Of course,
And
yes.
so in God's mind, from what he said, the New Year.
Seems like that, doesn't it? I agree. Yep, I agree. Yep. And that's what we do, isn't it?
But we need
We take everything. What?
we need 2 New Years. We can't see fireworks on the 4th of July.
That's exactly right. Thank you very much for adding that. That's exactly right. Okay? Now, Exodus 12 is all about the directions of how Israel is to do Passover in Egypt, and there are some things that are going to carry over into the land when they get into the land, promised land, right? Okay? Now, something that you noticed is that there's to be no leaven. Okay? Why was there to be no leaven? All right. That the reason they're given is you guys aren't going to have time to let the bread rise. You're going to get out of Dodge, and that means all you're going to have time to make is tortillas. Yes. Okay. Are tortillas unleavened bread? Of course they are. Okay, I have taken them and fried them till they're hard as a rock. Okay, so they can be just like matzah. Put a little salt on them, a little bit different spices, and a tortilla becomes matzah. So it's good to know. So this year, during unleavened bread, I'm going to eat tortillas. Go to Mexico. Oh, in Alaska. Has anybody ever been there? The restaurant? It's good. That's one of the oldest restaurants in Anchorage. So, anyway, now, later in the New Testament, Paul writes about Passover and says this: get rid of the old chametz, that's leaven, get rid of the old chametz so that you can be a new batch of dough, because in reality you are unleavened. Oh, so it's not really about the bread, it's about you. Okay, not having the leaven of sin in you. All right? He says, excuse me, for our Pesach lamb, the Messiah has been sacrificed. So let us celebrate the Seder, or the meal, or the Passover, not with the leftover chametz, the chametz of wickedness and evil, but with the matzah of purity and truth. Okay? Now, it has been asked, and rightly so, from the readings, it has been asked, hey, when these directions were given, there was a direction, there's a foreigner living among you, excuse me, they can keep Passover as long as what? They're circumcised. And to be circumcised meant more than the operation. It meant you're going to join Israel. Okay? So does that mean that when we have our Passover dinner, we ought to be checking people at the door? You think I'm joking? Seriously.
Christ took care of all of that. He said it is finished. We don't observe that.
We are not offering, you're right, we are not offering the lamb. So what we are doing is a memorial. That's what we're doing. We're remembering. Remember how important remembering is? We're not doing it because we got to make another sacrifice. Okay? So, in a way, it's over, but it isn't over because we're remembering and we're obeying by doing it in remembrance.
And the circumcision of the heart.
And there's a circumcision of the heart. Now, that doesn't mean that there's no value in the other circumcision, right? But you're right. Ultimately, that is the one that matters, right? Okay. Now, I have in here a list of amazing parallels between the Lamb of Passover and Yeshua and what happened with him. And I got these from reading the Bible and watching Mark Biltz. Some of these are from Mark Biltz, and I just think it's amazing. Okay, the leaven was removed from the house days before Passover. How many days? Anybody know? 4? Good guess. Yep. Okay. And what happens now is, even in Jewish families that are observant and practicing, is they take their children and they actually will sprinkle some leaven around the house, and they'll have the children, I need to stand up for a minute, they'll have the children go around the house with a feather and a dustpan and get all the leaven out of the house and sweep it up and get it out of the house with the idea of we're basically we're getting right with God and we're getting the garbage out of our lives. Okay, that's the idea behind it.
How many days?
I think 4. Is that right? 4? Okay. Well, Yeshua went in and cleansed his father's house the 4 days, or the exact number of days before Passover. Okay? There's your picture right there. The lambs that were brought to Jerusalem were raised in Bethlehem. I just got something stuck in my throat. It'll be all right. It's probably a tortilla. I just need to drink more water. The water went down the wrong way. Oh my goodness. That's the bummer of having this mic, is when something like that happens, you can't do anything about it.
Isn't there some baking soda or baking powder in tortillas?
I hope not. You have to ask Gar. Gar's the one with the background that would know that. Spanish Jew. Baking powder. Huh? Okay. Alan says no, there's not.
Well, then there's
So you need to look at the ingredients. Oh, you can make your own. Do you make without it? Yeah. Yep. Okay, cool. Is soda leaven? Baking soda, is that leaven?
Well, it acts like leaven, but it's not considered leaven because it's not alive.
Ah, there you go. It's not leaven because it's not alive. Leaven being yeast that is alive.
It's just like water, when it's described in the Bible, is always living water.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if they describe water that's stagnant, they will say stagnant water.
Right.
All water is living.
Yeah, living. Good.
Yeast, the same level is living.
That's a good one. Okay, Yeshua, who was born in Bethlehem, enters Jerusalem riding a donkey. Just on the day that the lambs would have been being brought into Jerusalem, Yeshua rides in to Jerusalem on the donkey, and they would have been singing the words of Hallel psalms, one of them being, Hoshiana, please, Adonai, save now. We beseech you, Adonai, prosper us. Baruch haba b'shem Adonai. Blessed is he who comes in the name of Adonai. We bless you from the house of Adonai. Okay, the meal was to be remembered for all generations. The Last Supper was a form of a Passover meal where Yeshua is to be remembered for all generations. The lambs that were offered were the firstborn of the lambs. That's interesting. Okay. Yeshua was the firstborn son of Yehovah, firstborn from the dead, firstborn among many brothers, firstborn over all creation. You read about that in the New Testament. The lambs were to be inspected for 4 days. Yeshua is inspected by the religious leaders for 4 days after he entered into Jerusalem. The lambs were to be without blemish. Yeshua was without blemish or sin. The lambs were bound for slaughter. Yeshua was nailed or bound to the cross or the stake. Israel was to put the lamb's blood on the doorposts. Yeshua's nail marks remind us of the blood of the lamb on the doorposts in Egypt. The lambs were killed around 3 in the afternoon when the high priest would say the words, "It is finished." Okay? Same with Yeshua. Dying at about 3 in the afternoon. And he, our high priest, says it is finished. The lamb's bones could not be broken. Yeshua's bones were not broken. Okay? The lamb was not to be left until morning. Yeshua was removed from the cross before the beginning of the next day or morning. Egyptians buried their firstborn the day after Passover.
This one I didn't get because it's evening and it's morning and it's a day. So the evening didn't start until 6 o'clock.
In the evening?
Yeah, he died at 3.
So what did you not get?
That he was buried the day after Passover because they actually took him down before the preparation day began.
Yes,
So
right.
he was buried the day.
Took him down. Well, he was probably buried at on the line of the beginning of the next day. Right then. Put in there.
Understandable that is
Yes.
at time of the year, they have long periods of sun, so it wasn't sunset until about 8 or 8:30.
Yeah, it's known as, Alan said, between the evenings or between the lights. Okay, it's what that period is known as when it's not really one day or the other. It's kind of a melding in there. So the lamb's blood saved the Israelites from death, and Yeshua's blood saves all who trust in him from death. So you have all of those pictures there that I think are made to make us say, wow, that's incredible. And this is to me one of the biggest values of reading the Bible and starting to learn from Hebrew perspective. Even though there's mountains to learn, I'll never learn it all. I mean, just mountains to learn. Is I missed all of this in my normal Christian life. I didn't know this, okay? And when you act it out every year, it's getting in you. And the memory of it is getting in you. And the reality of it is getting in you. And then you're handing it down to the next generation. So they're doing it, and it's getting in them. And I just think it's amazing and important and relevant in many different ways, okay? Which is the very next thing that we're going to read here is chapter 12, verse 24. You are to observe this as a law, you and your descendants forever. Your what? Your descendants, your offspring. When you come to the land which Adonai will give you, as he promised, you are to observe this ceremony, okay? Keep on doing this, in other words. Okay, literally it's guard over this act of worship, or guard over this act of avodah. Avodah is a very interesting word because it is translated as worship. The bottom line, it's used in Genesis when Adam was going to work the ground. He was going to avodah the earth. Okay, he was going to serve the earth by working the ground. Same word as the word for worship in Hebrew. Okay? And then we read this was a night, and this is also interesting because in different versions this is reversed. Okay, I'll tell you what I mean in a minute. This is the complete Jewish Bible. It reads like this. This was a night when Adonai kept vigil to bring them out of the land of Egypt. And this same night continues to be a night when Adonai keeps vigil for all the people of Israel through all their generations. Another version of the Bible reads that this is a night when Israel keeps vigil for Adonai, or for God. And through your generations on this night, you are to keep vigil for God. So which is right? Could be both. Okay. I think the idea that on that night, God was the one keeping vigil over Israel in order to protect them is the way that I look at it, okay, which is the way the complete Jewish Bible translates it. Keeping vigil just is a form of the Hebrew word shamar, which means guard, protect, surround. Shamar is the word used in the Garden of Eden when Yehovah looks at Adam, the man, and says, I want you to shamar the garden. Okay? So he's going to avodah the earth and shamar the garden. Guard the garden. Which apparently he didn't do really well. Okay? I have listed here the nuances of the root word shamar and what some of those mean. Okay? Last, we'll read this from the 13th chapter. Okay? When at future time your son asks you, what is this? Okay? Then say to him with a strong hand, Adonai brought us out of Egypt and out of the abode of slavery. When Pharaoh was unwilling to let us go, Adonai killed all the firstborn males in the land of Egypt, both the firstborn of humans and the firstborn of animals. This is why I sacrifice to Adonai any male that is first from the womb of an animal, but all the firstborn of my sons I redeem. This will be a sign on your hand and the front of a headband around your forehead, that with a strong hand Adonai brought us out of Egypt. Okay, those words are idioms for remember. Okay, remember in your mind and in your actions, your head and your hand. Those are idioms that mean remember in the way that you live your life. Interesting about this idea of the firstborn. What's up with that? Anyway, why? Why? Well, you have the measure for measure idea. Okay? The Egyptians went after the firstborn of God, which was Israel. So now he's going after their firstborn. But then you have this protection that is given. For Israel, the protection is over their firstborn. They are protected with the blood. But later, they're going to be protected by being redeemed. And what is that going to look like for them to be redeemed? I mean, later in the book of Exodus, they give money. Okay? They give money. That's what it's going to look like. They're going to buy back their own firstborns from God with an amount of money. And it's not a lot of money. 2 shekels, right? It's not that much. It's like $40 now. Okay? God made a way. And so what was that about? Are they literally buying the firstborn back from God? This is what I think. I think it's all about remembering. It's all about a reminder. And by the way, let me give you a reminder of this firstborn deal. Okay? When you have a firstborn, you're going to redeem them by handing in your those shekels. 2 shekels. There you go. Yes?
Well, just
Kathy.
questioning for clarification. It says any male that is firstborn. So it's not any firstborn, it's any male that's the firstborn. So
that's right. In Exodus, in this verse, later on, I believe, I could be wrong, but if I'm remembering it, later on, it's any firstborn. Doesn't matter if it's a man or a woman. Yep. How's that?
In this chapter, it's in the first.
Oh, okay.
It is.
Uh-huh. Yeah, any. Yep. Okay, that's all I have. You can read the rest, which are the Remembering Notes and 9 Reasons to Remember by Dennis Prager. I believe that all of them are right on, okay, about why we need to remember. By the way, for me, the way I'd put it like this: if you don't remember, you're not going to know who you are. It's the bottom line. When Israel didn't remember, they forgot who they were. I think that's one of the things that makes that sickness of dementia when people get aged so awful is, just the idea of not remembering who you are. It's awful. It's horrible. So if any of you know anybody that has that, is suffering from that, bless you. Bless them, help them. So, yes.
Could the $40 have been a way of giving an offering back to God for protection?
Yes, they are. It is a way of giving an offering back to God. Yep.
Okay. The idea behind redeeming means that you are buying back something that belongs to you that you've lost control of.
Uh-huh.
We see this in art. It's a Rembrandt. It belongs to Rembrandt. It will always belong to Rembrandt. It passed out of Rembrandt's hands to somebody else, but in Hebrew culture, the painter of that painting has the right to go back to whoever possesses it and buy it back. Now, granted, there's negotiation that occurs, and the payment has to be made, whatever the current owner has, but the creator has the ability to buy it back or give back possession of it. Well, in the interest of a child, a firstborn, it is a requirement that I give my firstborn to God. Okay? So my firstborn has gone out of my possession. It now is in God's possession. And so what happens is, God said, if you want your firstborn back, it's going to cost you 2. That's right. And so it's a negotiation, and we've made the negotiation, and I give him the 2, and he gives me back my son, because I was required to give it to him in the first place,
Yep,
or the firstborn child.
yeah, that's
So
right.
Redeeming, that's why when Jesus says we are redeemed by the blood,
Yep.
okay, so we belong to God because God created us.
Yes.
We are his possession. We have gone out of his possession,
Yes,
took off someplace for whatever reason, but he wants us back.
yep,
Okay, so he's going to pay a price to get us back, and the price to get us back was the blood of Jesus.
yep,
So he redeems us, buys us back into his possession, because we were created by him. And anything that you create is yours.
which is why Paul writes, you are not your own. You're not your own. You have been bought back with a price.
Escape for a while.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, guys, that's the end of the evening. We'll, I hope, be back next week, and Friday night, if you can be here, that'd be great. May you have a blessed week, the rest of the week, in Yeshua's name. By Zoom audience. Okay, the Zoomers are gone. You done up there, Jacob?